did, under execution, right?
Great, thank you.
Okay, so just so everyone,
On the packet as well.
And am I coming through okay? I've got a headset on now because my computer wasn't working really well.
better. So just so everyone knows, we are live right now. I'm going to wait another minute till I call the meeting in, but we are recording.
And this is Dave Gomberg. I just want to make sure you can hear me now.
Yep, we'll do some sound checks in a minute here.
All right, well, I'm watching you on my computer and talking to you on my phone.
Okay, we hear you.
Representative Gomberg, is that a quarantine beard? You know, the governor asked me that same question half an hour ago, and I promised her if she called us in a special session, it would be gone.
Okay, it's 11 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call the Monday, April 20th, 2020 special meeting of the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners to order. I believe I see Commissioner Hunt, and do I have Commissioner Hall?
Yes, I'm here.
Great, so we do have a quorum. I'm going to do some sound checks real quick, just to make sure we can hear everybody. So Wayne, can you say something?
This is Wayne Belmont.
Great. Tyler, are you there? No? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Sorry, it took me to get off mute.
Okay, we hear you. Commissioner Hunt, can you say something? Oh, we didn't hear you, Doug. Try again. Still can't hear you.
I'm here.
There you go. Now we can hear you. Okay. David did a sound check a minute ago. Jerry?
I'm here.
We hear you, Doug.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Lisa Combs?
I'm here.
Okay. Senator Roebland, sound check.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Nicole Fields?
Good morning.
Good morning. Commissioner Hall?
Good morning.
Okay, hear you. We already did Wayne earlier. Anna Husing?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can. Great.
All right. Cool.
Okay, Sheriff Landers?
Good morning. I'm here. Thank you.
Good morning, we hear you. And then caller 3, I'm not sure who that is. Is that Christy, maybe? Okay, not
I think
sure.
Christy's the other Wayne Belmont. She's under.
Oh, okay.
Front of the same one.
The other Wayne
Yeah.
Belmont, i.e. Christy,
Yeah.
can you say something?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, we hear you. Great, thank you. So to make sure we can hear everybody, thank you for joining us today. We're first going to start with the adoption of our consent calendar. These are items of a routine nature, which either commissioners or staff can pull out for further discussion if needed. So if either commissioner wants to pull something, let me know. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move for approval of the consent calendar as presented.
Okay, that was Commissioner Hall. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt seconds.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I don't think I heard Commissioner Hall say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. All right, great, motion carries. Next, under reports, we're first gonna start with a Lincoln County Public Health COVID-19 update. Nicole Fields, take it away.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me. So to give you an update on the current numbers in Oregon, there are currently 1,910 positive cases of COVID-19 in the state, including 4 in Lincoln County. To recap the recommendations from the governor to reopen the state of Oregon, we have some really important measures that we need to achieve before we can kind of confidently say that we're flattening the curve enough where we could reopen the state. So her 5 criteria was that Oregon first must slow the growth of COVID-19, which we've seen numbers kind of starting to flatten out, but we're not quite there yet. We must acquire adequate personal protective equipment to protect healthcare workers and first responders, so making sure that that PPE is available to all who need it. Ramping up COVID-19 testing capacity in every region in Oregon, developing a robust contact tracing system to track and contain COVID-19 cases, and establishing a quarantine and isolation program for new cases. So those are the 5 really important bullet points that the governor feels like we need to hit before we are ready to reopen the state. We realize that it's getting challenging. People are kind of feeling that stir craziness from being sheltering at home for so long, and we realize that, and we realize that that means that the social distancing measures are working to flatten the curve. So it's easy to get complacent, but we need people to still stay at home, continue to do what you're doing, wear those masks when you're out in public, and only go out for essential trips. So just really reminding people that it's critical that we make it through the next stage of this while they are still staying home. To give you a couple of updates on things that we're working on with HHS that might be of notice or note for y'all. The call center now has a behavioral health staff person on at all times that they're open. So if people are having any kind of behavioral health issue that they feel like they want to talk to someone about, whether that be, you know, having trouble coping with COVID-19 or something that's, you know, higher up on the crisis chain, they're welcome to call the call center and can be connected with someone at behavioral health. We are also working with the sheriff's office to help the call center dispatch the prescription delivery service that the sheriff's office is doing to help vulnerable populations get their prescriptions if it might not be safe for them to go out and get them themselves. We're really trying to focus on vulnerable populations now and in the next few weeks. It's super important in Oregon and across the nation that we do some special outreach for our vulnerable populations because they are being hit quite a bit harder than other populations with COVID-19. In the state of Oregon right now, about 25% of the cases of confirmed COVID-19 are with the Latinx population. And we know that that's because, you know, they're a more vulnerable population. A lot of the folks are still working right now. And so just making sure that we have proper outreach going out to the folks that might need it in our county. So we are working to get a Spanish outreach coordinator on board this week. We brought in a vulnerable populations lead to our Joint Information Center. And then we're doing some special outreach, and we have been this entire time, to our long-term care facilities. Just to make sure that we're doing everything possible to prevent an outbreak in a long-term care facility, because we've seen statewide that those are extremely dangerous and extremely fatal if there is an outbreak at a long-term care facility. So really doing all the outreach we can to help them with policies and procedures to make sure that doesn't happen here in Lincoln County.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Do we have any questions from either commissioner or comments?
No, not at this time.
Okay, Senator Roblin or Representative Gomberg, do either of you have questions?
No questions.
Okay, is there any questions from staff on the phone? No, all right, moving on. Thank you, Nicole. Next up, reports from Senator Roblin and Representative Gomberg. We just kind of want to make sure that we had an opportunity for you to update on us on what was going on your end, and just make sure we continue to do a good job of communicating with each other, which I think those communication lines have been excellent, by the way, but just wanted to kind of formally do that with all 3 of us here at the same time in a public setting. So I'll just start with Senator Roblin. If you have an update, go ahead.
Thank you for the invite. As you know, this has been going on for a while. I have been meeting with the Tillamook County Commission, the Yamhill County Commission, the group down in Southern Oregon, which represents Coos, Curry, Douglas, and Josephine counties. And so it's really great to be on here and to have an opportunity to talk with you. As you all know, the Joint Committee on the Coronavirus took place a number of weeks ago. Our goal was to come up with immediate things that we need to take action by in the legislature. The reality became clear that the governor's executive powers allowed her to do most of those things, and she used much of the work that we did as a roadmap for her stuff. Right now, we're in constant conversations with the 4 caucuses to look at whether or not we should come back with another emergency board meeting to look at issues that either the federal government has not paid for, and we can fill in the gaps, or that the executive orders haven't covered. We have no definite date on time for that to happen, but we are expecting that to happen before the May forecast, which is probably the soonest that we would have a special session, because right now getting our state agencies to look at what is really coming forward and what are the different conditions that are coming with all the federal money is taking a lot of time to get straight. We have done things in the past early and then found out that the federal government was paying for them, but they wouldn't reimburse us for the stuff we had already done. So since we have limited funds, we're making sure that we get all that stuff right before we start doing anything right now. So conversations are taking place with all 4 of the caucuses about the kinds of things that are important, from housing to small businesses and Dave can talk about that more. The federal money paid for a lot of small businesses. Their definition is anything under 500. We have a lot of small businesses that aren't that big, and Dave can talk about that more. But there are some gaps that we are finding that we want to take care of. So we only have $50 million in that budget, and so we have to be very careful with it. We also have a fire season that we're expecting to come up, and we want to make sure that we're ready for that. So there's some issues that we can take care of in the emergency session. We have now decided that the emergency board can meet remotely, so we can do it like you're doing here. So that's something that we'll be trying here in the new, fairly short time. The COVID committee actually did that, so about half of us were in the room and the other half were remote. So we found out technologically we could do it. So I think we're ready to move forward with that. Other than that, I have been impressed with all of our counties and their leadership taking charge in the situations where they needed to, and North Coast in particular and Central Coast when it came to the visitations from Washington during spring break. We closed down things a little quicker than we'd anticipated, including working with the state parks. So I appreciate all the efforts that you have made to keep our citizens safe and to encourage people. We'd love you to come back when it's safe, but right now is not the time to visit the coast. So those messages have been pretty clear up and down the coast, and we're trying to figure out how can we continue to allow our commercial fishing fleet to go out and do their work and get the stuff back here and maybe sell off the boat, off the docks, which you have looked at in the past, Katie. So we appreciate that opportunity for good protein to come in and give our fishermen a chance to make a little bit of cash. So those conversations are going on with the governor and the other people who need to help make those decisions. So Coastal Caucus meets twice a week to talk about issues. I'm on the Economic Advisory Committee for the governor, and that meets once a week to have conversations. We're having subgroups break into the different from recreation activities to restaurants and so on. We're going to break into small groups in that group and start having conversations around the governor's plan to re-enter into society again. And we're looking at that from a regional perspective as well, where the cases are a lot lower than they are in the metropolitan area. So figuring out how that phase out can happen without creating an opportunity for a whole lot of people to come visit us when we don't really need them to do that right now. So we're looking at it cautiously. I appreciate the opportunity to hear from the counties and their perspectives. So thank you, and I'll leave it the rest for Dave.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, some of you were on the call with the governor at 10 o'clock this morning, and you heard the concern that I shared, that the state economist has made it clear that not all parts of Oregon are impacted the same by the health or economic crisis that we're confronting. And in particular, the Central Coast and the North Coast are the ones that are suffering the most economically. That's demonstrated by the fact that our unemployment rates here are significantly higher than many other parts of the state. And then finally, our chambers of commerce have been surveying their members and coming back with reports that they anticipate that as much as 1/3 of our businesses may not recover from the shutdown. So I asked the governor, when we apply resources, can we ensure that they get to all parts of Oregon? can we ensure that they come to the parts of Oregon where the unemployment is the highest and the potential for recovery is the lowest? And I believe that I got a positive answer to that question, but I think we need to continue to put that question on the record. Now, let me say that all to you a different way. Senator Rowland indicated that we will likely be called into a meeting of the emergency board as early as this week. And for those that may be listening and not quite clear, what is the emergency board? It is a subset of the legislature that is empowered to spend money when the legislature is not in session, but only a limited amount of money, and currently it's about $50 million in the account. There are proposals moving forward to spend about $30 million of that money on small business assistance, on worker support, on housing, and some related kind of topics. Now, I said that I was going to say that all parts of Oregon need to benefit in a different way. And the point that I'm trying to make is this: I want to make sure that the emergency board allocations also get to all parts of Oregon and benefit the parts of Oregon that are suffering the most. The final thing that I'll share with you is, yes, we are beginning to talk about recovery, and we're beginning to talk about the possibility of a regional rollout of recovery efforts. I think we all acknowledge that needs to be done very, very carefully at the beach. And I say that because we are suffering and there is growing pressure for us to begin to reopen and put people back to work. But if we open all parts of our economy, that just simply creates a magnet for other people in other parts of the state to come over here and potentially bring risks with them. So we're going to need to do our rollout very, very cautiously. I heard an interesting analogy earlier today. If you jump out of an airplane with a parachute and you open your parachute, it'll slow your descent. And because you've slowed your descent, that is not the time to take the parachute off, because you'll speed up again. We need to be very, very carefully about how we begin to react when we have successfully slowed the curve, and make sure that we continue to flatten that curve out without increasing our risk in reopening too soon.
Thank you. Is there questions or comments? I'll start with Commissioner Hunt because I see your face. Anything you want to ask or comment on from either of them?
Well, I would just echo some of Representative Gombert's comments. I think we need to be extraordinarily careful as we address opening services throughout the state. And my concern is that if you start opening regionally, I believe the coast being a magnet is a good descriptive word. And I am very concerned about opening regionally and putting the residents of our county at risk, because the coast is a great place to come and visit, but now's not the time to do it.
Okay, Commissioner Hall, questions or comments?
Yeah, one question that I think is relevant to what's been discussed so far. We have received an invitation, and apparently commissioners and county judges throughout the state are invited to participate in a conference call Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock. And certainly I want to seek my colleagues' opinions, public safety and public health, but state parks, the indication, and this came through the Association of Oregon Counties, is interested in having this conversation because they have an interest in looking at reopening at least part of their system as soon as mid-May. And, I don't know how everybody else feels, but, again, with the news, which was just posted, that we've got our fifth confirmed case of the virus in the county, our first in 18 days, and that apparently it's being investigated as a community acquired case, that now is not the time for us to loosen up in any significant ways, and as Representative Gombert said, create that magnet that's going to draw people here.
I just want to pause for a minute. I think the update we had from Nicole just a few minutes ago said we only had 4 confirmed cases. You were
It's
saying we're at
published
5?
on our website right now. It just went up. 5th Lincoln County resident test positive for COVID-19.
Yeah, this is Nicole. I was trying to wait until we got information out to everyone, and then went ahead and did the media release.
So we are at 5 confirmed cases now, and this is a community acquired case.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you for that.
Yeah, I only brought that up because I saw it was on the website and it popped up on my news feed.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that. I had not heard.
received an email, but, it hadn't been made public yet.
Got it. Okay, I just wanted to say I had not heard that State Parks was looking at reopening. My comments
Yes,
to Senator Roblin and to Representative Gomberg, kind of saying that we all have said we're concerned about regional reopening. And as far as State Parks reopening, I guess I'm really confused. In a call with the governor just an hour ago, we went through kind of the phased approach, what communities needed to have in order to reopen, including PP&E caches and various things, potentially talking about a letter from local hospitals, saying they have these things in place, a letter from public health authority, as well as some type of voting authority like the county commissions or cities voting to reopen. But if State Parks is already planning a reopen date, then I feel like those criteria being set out by the governor's office doesn't matter, because as soon as State Parks opens, the cat's out of the bag kind of deal. So I feel like we need some coordination. And if those criteria that are being laid out are indeed going to be needed, then those things should happen in communities before State Parks reopen. To me, that's kind of 2 different processes that aren't maybe connected. And so I guess I'm looking at both Arnie and David to kind of try to get some clarity on that for us.
Yeah, I'll check with Lisa. I cannot imagine that she would not be including each of the counties in that stuff. The coordination between the counties and the state and parks in particular has been pretty good from everything I've heard. So I can't imagine her doing that. I can see her being asked to consider what it would look like for them to open up parks, but that's a different story than actually doing it. So I will check with her as well, and I'm sure David can check too.
Great, I appreciate that. Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but the email did go out from Greg Wolf of AOC late Friday afternoon to all commissioners and judges, and it indicates they're considering a phased reopening of daytime visits as soon as mid-May, but says they will be looking from counties to provide input on the criteria and conditions that we would like met prior to any reopening.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what that makes some sense, and I haven't seen that email, but that's kind of what I would have expected from them. Also, I'll let you know I have another interview I have to do at 11:30, so
Okay.
I will
Yeah.
check with.
Anything else? Well, I guess I'll go to my list. I skipped myself. I guess the last thing I would say to both you, Arnie and David, is it sounds like the CARES funding that's coming from the federal government to the state, then part of that CARES funding is for local governments. It sounds like we're only going to be used that directly on COVID-related expenses. And I would just say that needs to be opened up if possible, besides just COVID-related stuff. We're certainly in a lost revenue state. Also, we've had a lot of employees we've had to temporarily retask to do other jobs related to emergency management, quite a few employees. And we cannot claim their personnel time unless it's overtime related. So I would just say that we really need that potential funding. I'm not sure if it's state putting the guidelines on that or the federal government, but where at all possible, we need those to be as open as possible. So that's my comments.
So we've had that conversation with the federal delegation. It's mostly federal requirements. There's a frustration at the state level as well with the money that's coming in. It is a total frustration with our hospitals and our rural hospitals because many of us have no COVID cases. And so if you're related, if your money is coming based on how much you're dealing with the virus is what shut us down, and we need the resources to keep them going. So conversations continue to go, especially with their new package. But and it's about 45% of the money coming to the state is supposed to go to local governments, including counties. And we'll have to figure out that there is, hopefully we will continue to look at all of the ramifications of that bill and the restrictions that they put on it. But you're right, our first read of it was the same thing from the state's perspective as well, that the restrictions were going to make it much harder to use the money appropriately, especially in states like Oregon, where we have done a pretty amazing job. You know, we're listed right now as one of the top 5 states in the nation for the least number of deaths per thousand, and we could be one of the leaders in the world with regard to that, and that's because Oregonians have done what they're supposed to be doing. So,
correct. Yeah, thank you for that. All right. Well, I know both of you have places you need to be. You're welcome to stay, but feel free to get off if you have other meetings you need to attend to. Really appreciate the both of you joining us today, and we'll try to have you on in the future as well. And feel free to reach out to all of us in the meantime. So just thank you for everything you've done. I know you've been advocating for us and your whole region. So thank you to both of you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to both of you for the good job you've done in representing our interests.
Yes, I'll second or third those sentiments. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Take care of yourselves.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to,
Chair,
yes.
Chair Jacobson, if I may, I'd like to just comment I guess, in support of Commissioner Hall. I know that there has been a lot of discussion about the state parks reopening, and as has been said by others, I'll state again, I'm extraordinarily concerned about opening the state parks until the governor's criteria has been met. And certainly, if you start opening state parks, even on a regional basis, the attraction of our coast and our state parks, as well as our county parks, is of grave concern to me, and the risk that our residents will experience by an influx of visitors from outside the county, frankly. So I offer that information in support of Commissioner Hall's participation in that phone call on Wednesday.
Yeah, thank you. I would agree exactly with what you said. You know, there might be certain areas that could open, I guess, but again, I'm really concerned about that as well. Camping and campgrounds for me right now, you know, mid-May opening, I just can't imagine that being a good choice right now. But yeah, I agree. And I feel like if there's criteria being put out by the governor, which there is, around when communities can reopen, then I feel like that criteria needs to be met first. So
I would agree.
okay. All right, moving on to decision and action. We need to discuss a second addendum to the declaration of state of emergency presented by Wayne Belmont County Council. Wayne.
Good morning, commissioners and guests. And I guess this is actually directly related to the conversations we've just been having, because what you have is a state and national framework and a set of criteria for reopening, but we don't have any time frames right now. Lincoln County, of course, adopted a declaration of an emergency on March 13th of this year, and then at the next full board meeting, you extended that declaration to April 30th by resolution 20-18-3B. But we're coming up on that date. And one of the things we need to do in order to continue the activities and actions that we have been taking is to continue with the declaration of a state of emergency. So what we did is we looked at what the state's doing. And it's interesting because actually the governor made a declaration early on. It was almost not quite 60 days ago now. But that state declaration actually expires, and depending on how you count the days, on May 7th or May 8th, and that has not been extended. So even though the governor has done a number of executive orders pursuant to that declaration, dealing with gatherings, restaurants, those kinds of things. And in fact, those orders actually came to their expiration, and she continued those. And in her continuation, she continued them until they were terminated. So with no specific time frames, the original state declaration does expire. So what we're recommending you do at this time is to go ahead and extend the county declaration of an emergency until May 8th, 2020. But we continue with the proviso that it would be effective through that date unless it was terminated sooner or modified or extended. So any questions on that?
No questions?
No questions. I guess the only thing I would state is that, again, I think being aligned with the governor makes a lot of sense at this time.
I would agree. Can I get a motion?
I'll move to approve the second addendum to the declaration of a state of emergency.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Hunt, second by Commissioner Hall. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Motion carries. Thank you, Council Belmont. Next up, discussion and information. Short-term rental restriction. This is extension of Order 3-23-85. Again, presented by Council Belmont.
Commissioners, pursuant to the authority that you have under an emergency declaration, you got together with all the cities in Lincoln County to discuss whether or not to prohibit short-term rentals in the county. And you had a pretty extensive discussion of that and adopted an order. And the original adoption date, I wanted to provide that to you, was March 23rd of this year, and that actually expires too, coming up on April 30th. So we need to have some discussions about whether to allow that to lapse or to extend or to modify it. And so what we've done is we've had some discussions. We were required under the order to have consultations with our partners in the cities. And there was a consensus from that group that we try to get back together again to have a discussion about this particular order and what to do next. And so what we've scheduled is a special meeting on next Monday, the 27th at 1:30 p.m. We're going to do this as, again, a live telecast. We'll actually utilize the facilities of the city of Newport again and have Katie as the chair attend. And I think the mayor will be there of Newport, and bring together again all the mayors and councils of the entire county to discuss the extension of this particular order. So we'll get the appropriate notices together. We've been talking to our partners at the cities. Everybody's pretty aware of that. Our hope is that they have some discussions internally about their positions on this prior to the 27th. That's why we put as far out as we could to hold the hearing, and then we'll get together and see what the next steps are.
I think that sounds like a good plan. I think we do need to circle back with all of our city partners on that. I think we've invited the tribe on this one as well. So I think making sure we have that discussion again and hopefully having some agreement and collaboration between all of us. I think that was amazing that we all did that together. I think it made it easier for law enforcement to enforce that role. And I think as we thinking about extend or modify or letting it lapse, again, we need to do that together. And as we talk about reopening, whenever that happens, we also need to work on doing that together. So I think the plan to have this discussion next week on that particular order and discuss with all of them, I think is a good plan moving forward.
I support that.
I do too. Madam Chair, can I ask the sheriff a question if he's still online?
Go ahead.
And I don't know, maybe next week would be a good chance for him and perhaps other law enforcement to present, but I don't know about the rest of you, but I would say the number one issue of concern that I hear from the community is enforcement of this measure, and if we could get some picture of what kind of resources are being devoted to this, by the county, by the cities, and, whether it's been necessary to issue any citations or warnings, maybe just some sense on what the compliance level has been. I would find that interesting and might help me reach my decision in deciding how much further forward we want to continue this.
Yeah, Sheriff Landers, do you want to respond to that?
Sure. Curtis Landers, Lincoln County Sheriff. Just to clarify, do you want me to obtain more information, more statistical data for the meeting? I can tell you it has been over the last couple of weeks. We have been enforcing and following up on several complaints that come in or that about the restrictions. And we really haven't found any people in violation specifically, and there haven't been any citations issued, but we continue to follow up on any complaints we get, so there are resources going out for that, and I can get you more information on that for that meeting.
I would be interested in that.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
I think it would also be helpful, maybe you could coordinate with other law enforcement partners, because I think, well, we certainly want to know what's happening in the unincorporated areas of Lincoln County. I think it would be nice to know from our law enforcement partners in Lincoln City and Newport as well, in terms of if they've had citations or stuff going on with this order in their communities. I think that would be helpful to have kind of an overall law enforcement picture, not just Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. So that would be helpful if you could kind of coordinate that.
Absolutely, I can coordinate that for the meeting and get that information. Are you looking specifically for the short-term rental or overall for the for all the restrictions?
Well, I think definitely to Commissioner Howell's point, the short-term rental would be probably the biggest one in discussing that, but with the meeting we have with cities next week. But I would also say, on this discussion we had about state parks earlier in this meeting and, regional reopening, those kinds of things, I think the information on other closures you're dealing with and responses to that, those things would probably be helpful to understand to guide us in these other decisions we're looking at making.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
I will do that. I can also say that over this last weekend was much better than the previous weekend
Good.
for a number of contacts that we made. I don't know if the messaging got out, or Saturday, of course, the weather wasn't as nice as it was the weekend before, but deputies reporting a much better weekend overall for those type of activities, for lack of activities.
Good. Thank you. That's good to hear. Okay. Any other?
Sheriff Jacobson,
Yes.
Sheriff Jacobson, as far as I'm concerned, when we look at the short-term rental restriction, it's really no different than any other aspects of the county and opening. And I think certainly the governor's criteria is an important part of this decision process for me.
Okay. Thank you. All right, anything else on extension of order 32385? Again, we're not voting today. We're simply just kind of bringing it up, and we will have that discussion with our cities next week.
Sounds good.
Okay. Next, an update on resolution 24-3B as in boy, short-term rental license suspension. Council Belmont.
Thank you, Chair Jacobson. This matter is not directly related to COVID, but it's impacted by COVID, if I could put it in that way. About a week before you actually made the declaration of an emergency, you considered and adopted this resolution 20-4-3B actually on March 4th of 2020, which instituted a suspension of the processing of new short-term rental licenses. And the reasons why we were doing that is that we were working on some, looking at some interim recommendations for changes to our code provisions which regulate short-term rentals, also exploring some further long-term options for what we might want to do in the future. And then we could actually bring you back a package of decisions that could be finalized to update our program requirements. Well, needless to say, I'm sorry, that suspension was scheduled to last through for 60 days, which is May 7th, coming up in the not too distant future here. But needless to say, we have had no time to actually spend working on any of those aspects of the short-term rental licensing program. And so as we're coming up onto the time, you have an option either, again, to lift that particular suspension and start taking new applications, or to extend it for a period of time and make any other modifications you'd like in the program. So I wanted to bring that up to give you that update, to let you know that we really do need to do something with this particular resolution. And we did contemplate at the time we did it that we would like, or possibly need some more time anyway for this particular action. So what I wanted to do was get some feedback from you as to where you want to go with this, and then we'll place something on either next week's meeting, the 27th, or the following Monday, which is, I think, the 4th of May, to take action on this particular matter.
Thank you, Wayne. I guess my initial thoughts is, yes, we haven't had time to work on these aspects because we've been in a state of emergency. And so, all of our time, energy, resources has really been going to managing that emergency. Not how we thought we'd be spending these last 60 days, but that is the reality in which we're living in. My thoughts on this are twofold. One is we do need to find a way to kind of get back to some of our quote normal business while we're within this time period. This is a pretty heated issue, obviously. Lots of people want to weigh in. At this point, we're doing public comment by email. But I guess to really take this up and take this on, I feel like we need to find some additional ways that the public could participate. With social distancing rules in place, we really can't have a typical public meeting where people would, pack into our conference room and sit down next to each other and provide comment. I think it's going to be a while until that's allowed. So I think we just need to find additional ways for people to provide comment, because this is one of those issues that, people have a lot of feelings about one way or the other. So, I just feel like we need to work on how we provide public comment in this time while we go through these issues. Email, yes, you can email us. However, there's something to be said about coming to a meeting and watching us deliberate and then giving your public comment at the end, where you can see what's happening at the meeting and then decide to provide comment based on what you've heard. And in an email type of situation where you're emailing ahead of time, it's a little challenging. So I think we just need to kind of think about, as we take on this particular issue, how we do that.
And if I might note for the record, I did receive one email this morning before the meeting commenting on this item itself and asking that requesting that we actually lift the moratorium for now and don't continue it. And that comment will be entered into the record for the hearing, or for this meeting.
Okay. Commissioner Hunt? Comments?
Well, I think, I agree. We need to look at ways to getting back to normal, quote unquote. I think the rental license suspension is something that we can extend, and again, being consistent with some of the other policies and practices we're implementing. And I think we need to make sure we have county resources available to address the COVID situation. So I'm okay in extending the suspension for some period of time to be identified.
Okay, Commissioner Hall?
I am in favor of extending the suspension as well, and I'm wondering if perhaps the sheriff's office can give us some input prior to that decision. I don't know how the two of you feel, but really, again, of course, the crisis of the pandemic has thrown all our timelines off kilter, but we talked about the initial suspension as providing an opportunity to get our second enforcement person trained and deployed in the field, and also getting the monitoring management software in place. And, you know, until those two things have happened, I am not wanting to consider issuing any new licenses, at the very least.
Okay, well, we're not scheduled to make a decision today. This was just discussion and information, although I think it's clear where the two of you are at. So Council Belmont, do you have what you need to kind of move forward then for our, sounds like our next meeting or the meeting after, for us to put this on decision
I will be
action?
soliciting public comment on this, and I'll be talking with the Sheriff's Office and with Lisa Combs about the implementation of some of those other measures you discussed, so we can get that information back to you. And it looks like that likely what we'll do is we'll bring this back to you on you actually have a Monday meeting tentatively scheduled for Monday the 27th in the morning, so that we can make some kind of decision at that time. So we'll be shooting for that, placing it on the agenda.
Okay, I would suggest we possibly move up our timeline and getting this press release out for that next meeting, so that people have as much time as possible to provide comment via email.
We'll do that.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, appointment to the Lincoln County Planning Commission presented by our Planning Director, Anno Husing.
Good morning, Commissioners. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes. Great, great. Well, I'm getting used to this experience along with the rest of you, trying to do this electronically. Never as good as in person, but pretty darn good, all things considered. Again, Anno Husing, I'm the Director of the Lincoln County Planning Commission, I am not the Director. I'm the Director of the Lincoln County Planning Department. Today, I'm here to answer your questions and have a discussion about making sure that we get the number of people that we need to be serving on our Lincoln County Planning Commission. You have in your packet, the public has access to that as well, a short memorandum that I wrote explaining how it works in Lincoln County, that we have, the county is divided into 3 sections. We have a north section, a central section, and a south section of the county. And that's meant to ensure that our planning commissioners, that we have a broad representation across the county from the different parts of the county, north, central, and south. For people to understand where those dividing lines are, the top of Cape Foulweather marks the border between the north and the central, and Beaver Creek marks the border between the south and the central. So at this time, as your memorandums expresses, we have 7 planning commissioners currently on board. I am recommending that 3 of those planning commissioners be reappointed, and their terms are at an end. And they've signaled a desire to continue to serve, and I think they've done an outstanding job. And those reappointments, if you were to adopt that recommendation, would be Commissioner Bugenhagen, Commissioner Porch, and Commissioner Cutler. So again, those are existing serving commissioners that have desired to be reappointed. In addition, there are 2 other recommendations that I have for open seats. One is for a north seat, and that is the north seat. I am recommending an individual named Marcia Stratton Shalin. She goes by Shalin as her first name. And again, she's got extensive experience, including in the armed forces years ago, a lot of planning experience in California, lived in the county for 7 years. I think would bring a lot to the table, and I recommend her. I also recommend Scarlett Kerr, who is a realtor working for Advantage Realty. She would be representing one of the South Coast seats. Her residence is up in Tidewater. Again, Scarlett is well known in the community, respected in the community, and I know from firsthand experience, one of the reasons I'm recommending her is that she really does try to understand when she's representing clients She represents, she does a very good job of doing her homework and trying to understand the land use system and the zoning and the building permits. So I think her experience would be a contribution to the kind of dialogue that we would happen at the Planning Commission. So I would also, if there's any comments from Jerry Herbich, he helped out in terms of pulling this together and making sure. I want to acknowledge the Commissioner's Office helping out, making sure that we got the word out, because I think it's important. I do want to close with something I could have said at the beginning of this discussion, is that when we touched base with our commissioners at the beginning of this process in February, you said that you thought it was very, very important that we put a public statement out there that we were looking for planning commissioners, because we really wanted this to be a transparent process where we had everybody had an opportunity in Lincoln County to apply, and so we did end up with approximately 9 applications. There were outstanding individuals. It was a difficult decision, but I think we've got a very good slate of commissioners in front of you right now. The bottom line is we need to make sure we can get, the reason it's so important to have a quorum is to be able to get a quorum. And so that's why we really need to at least reappoint those commissioners. That's my recommendation, and appoint those two other planning commissioners. Because as we come out of this COVID situation, we've got some stuff backed up. We're going to have some very important issues addressed that our planning commission needs to address, and so it's very important we get these people on board. With that, Madam Chair, I will yield the floor and happily respond to any questions or comments from the commission.
Thank you, Anno. Jerry Herbich, is there anything you would like to add to this? I know you've been working with Anno and his department on this issue. Anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Chair. This is Jerry Herbich, for the record. Appreciate the work that Anno has done. What I want to say is just a couple of things. One is under ORS, I think it's 215.030, there are diversity requirements. And so part of Anno's job is to check to make sure that we don't, with these appointments, have more than 2 people from the same profession, or more than 2 from real estate. And he also mentioned the diversity based on the regions of the county. And Anno has advised me that his recommendations would ensure that we comply with the law on the diversity that's required. I think that's a good thing. And apart from the quorum, really any decision of the Planning Commission should be by a majority of the total members that should be there. In other words, a decision should be made by 5 people. So it's very important that we have a full complement of Planning Commission members, because as for instance, if you had only 5 show up, that would make a quorum, but it would be very hard to carry a vote. So we need the full complement. We need to move forward on this. And I really appreciate the board taking this up today as a discussion item. And I would appreciate when the board can to go ahead and make the appointments so we have the full complement. As Anno had indicated, we do have a lot on the table, and not just quasi-judicial matters, but legislative matters that need to be reviewed by the commission as well. Those items, the legislative matters, will come back to the board. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jerry. I don't have any questions. I know one of the applicants. I don't know the other one, but I've reviewed all of the applications, all 9 that came in. I read and went over, and I feel good with the recommendation made by our director. Commissioner Hall, questions or comments from you?
No questions. Looks like good recruits, and I would be comfortable with moving these forward for action.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt?
No, I would agree. I think it's been a very transparent process. I think it's important to note that it does have diversity, and diversity in many ways as required, and I'm quite comfortable with the appointment as recommended.
Okay, thank you. Council Belmont, we had this on just our discussion today. Do we need to bring it back for adoption at a later date?
We'll place the orders making the appointments on next week's calendar.
Okay, sounds good.
Sounds good.
All right, I think that's all we had on our agenda for today. We don't have reports on here. Well, I guess I skipped that. Sorry. Is there any reports from Commissioner Hunt?
No, not at this time.
Commissioner Hall reports?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, yeah, and I will say nothing at this time as well. Other scheduled meetings we have coming up Monday, April 27th at 10 a.m. We'll have another Board of Commissioners meeting online, of course. And then also Monday, April 27th, 2020 at 1:30 p.m. We will have another virtual meeting with the Board of Commissioners, also with mayors or city councils from Lincoln City, Depot Bay, Newport, Siletz, Toledo, Walport, and Yachats, and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians to again discuss the extension of our short-term rental restrictions. So those are the two meetings we have coming up. Public comments can be given via email to BOC, again, B as in boy, OC at co.lincoln.or.us. All right, thank you, everybody. Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.